going to start with what I see as kind of one of the bigger questions when you're talking about special teams, and acknowledging that the four of us, we're all converted. We've all coordinated special teams. All of us, we're all big fans of special teams. But I think the elephant in the room, we must admit that in some programs, with some people, special teams takes a back seat. And my question is, when you're involved in a program, how do you, get through to the head coach, to the other assistant coaches, and especially to the players, the importance of special teams? What are some of your thoughts on that? Coach McNally, I'll give you a kind of first crack at it.
Well, every coach will say special teams is primary importance. And to some degree, they all will walk that talk. But I don't think they'll ever give it the same, or rarely is it given the due that the special teams coordinator would like to see. I think in many ways, the players are the easiest guys to convince that it's a big deal, especially with the roster sizes that we have. Now they see it as a way on the field. And, I always tell the guys that, hey, first of all, punt team isn't going to be a way onto the field. Our best players are going to play on punt team for various reasons, but there's proving grounds. There's the punt return. There are, kickoff return. They're all areas where you have a chance where, a mistake isn't maybe going to kill you like it will on punt team. And you get a chance to prove that you're a consistent player and that you can go out and do what's asked of you time and time and time again, and prove your way onto maybe a punt team and then somewhere else. And I think it's one thing to say that, but you've got to go into meetings and, I have first crack at the guys on Sunday mornings before or just after they do their rundown. And, it's really an important part of that meeting for me, in addition to the teaching part of it, to catch guys on their way to success, to say, okay, here's a guy who, maybe been struggling, but check out the plays that he made on this day. And maybe just do a little feature with a particular guy, and who's made 2 or 3 plays, who's maybe been knocking on the door. And I find when you do that, if it's something that you're fairly consistent with, they all want to be the next guy. They all want to be the next guy so it's not difficult at all I find to get the players to buy into it. You get the occasional guy who doesn't want to be out there after he's been a starter maybe 2 or 3 years and doesn't want to play a whole lot of special teams, but that's very rare. Most of the guys know that if they are going to play at the next level, the good guys, that's going to be they're going to need to have a resume on special teams. With other coaches, with the head coach, it's getting time. I've looked at the time we spend on special teams in a week, and the time that some other teams spend on special teams in a week, and we're not quite there. But I know that with probably in general terms, we're okay. But I find we just have enough time to do the basics, and if we want to do something a little extra on special teams, I've got to negotiate for time. So it's that time thing I find with the head coach. And then, if you're going to compress your special teams into tight areas, tight times, you need to have other assistant coaches who really know what you want and are keen about doing it with your groups, whether you're running some kind of a circuit. So again, that goes back to coaching coaches, and which is a different kettle of fish altogether, because I can't even be at all the drills, right? But I look at it on video and say, hey, that's really not what I want from that drill. I want this drill to look like this. And this is, maybe if we start it differently, if we have the rotation move differently. Coaches don't like those conversations very often, but you got to have them. You got to have them quick. I try to do it just as business-like as possible. Maybe you misunderstood me here. I'm not sure what, and that's probably what it is. They probably didn't quite understand what I wanted, and so we got to correct that. We got to make that drill work, or don't bother with the drill. It's not only a waste of time; it's a negative use of time.
Phenomenal.
It's time with the coaching staff.
Yeah, that's great, Coach. Coach Daley, any additional thoughts on that topic?
Well, I 100% agree with what Dan has said. I have comments relevant to it, but I don't want to get off track either. But your question was how. To me, it's a cultural thing. Dan talked about how the players, generally speaking, are quick to buy in, and they will if you're coaching. If you're paying lip service to it, then they just perform. They just do what you tell them to do. They don't buy in. There's a difference, right? And same with coaches. Like, to me, the starting point has to be the staff in terms of buy-in. It has a trickle-down effect that is exponential with the players. Not all coaches will buy in, but they do have to respect what you're doing. And I've only had a couple of instances in the whatever number of years it is I've coached, 40 some. I've only had a couple of instances where coaches were just oblivious to special teams. And those were tough times because it does affect the players. So what Dan talked about, like in trying to use coaches in drills, I think is really important. We do that at X, I think, really well, especially when we do our coverage, kickoff cover and kickoff return drills, where we have every coach on the field is in that drill, in those special team periods. Quarterback coach, O-line coach is doing the show work with the big O-line guys for those drills. I mean, they then feel part of it. Like our O-line, I'm sure Dan has situations like this too. Our O-line at St. Francis Xavier can't wait until we do kickoff cover drill because they are the show team and they don't have to run more than 6 yards in a rep. But they love doing the technique and being the show guy, and there's no contact in it, but they love being part of it. And they just sprint from their individual period up to the drill when they know it's coming. And if you get that type of enthusiasm, it's contagious. And but it starts with the coaches and with the head coach. And it's not automatic that the head coach and the special team coach have the same perspective of priorities and culture. For example, and I don't know what Dan's experience has been with this, and you guys have coached special teams, but I am very wary when I hear from a head coach that all backup players have to play special teams. Is he saying that for him to be on the roster, he has to be good enough to play special teams? Or is he saying that our 7th and 8th receiver, you have to use on special teams? If it's the latter, I have a real problem with it because the 7th and 8th receiver isn't good enough to play on offense yet. They may be an all-Canadian in 2 years, but they're not ready today, and you expect them to start on special teams. And I think that's step one of the culture. That, to me, a guy who's a backup shouldn't be automatically assumed to be capable of playing special teams just because he's a backup offensive or defensive player. And I don't think people even talk about that or think about that enough. I think at X, we do a really good job with those last few roster spots where the special teams factors in huge, but we don't leave our offense and defense too thin. Every offensive and defensive coordinator would love to have 5 backups instead of 3 in a thing, but that impacts your special teams if those last 2 can't play special teams. So I think the culture thing, like I remember being in special team meetings, personnel meetings, in the CFL as a special team coach, and every player was being evaluated, discussed, and decisions were being made on the final roster for the year after training camp. And the only coach in the room's opinion who was not asked was the special team coach. That's a dangerous sign, because you're an afterthought. So I think changing the head coach or impact or coordinating with the head coach in terms of the culture is crucial. Then the assistants, and if you can involve them in a drill in training camp with minimal preparation on their part, because they don't have time, they don't want to take time. They do have a focus. They're an O-line coach or a D-line coach or a linebacker coach or a coordinator. You can't ask them to be fully involved in all special teams, but you can ask them to be fully involved in that drill. And what you have to do is prepare them with the least minutes of their time being used to meet, and then have them do the drill, and then they feel part of it from there on in.